Matters of Transmat Malfunction, written by Dr. McCrimmon.
Osgood, get away from there.
The distinct Cheshire accent of her friend and co-worker, Lieutenant Sam Bishop, echoed off the cavern, barely heard over the high, fast whir of the device before her.
It's gonna blow any second.
Ever the hero, Sam broke out into a run, racing across the enormous cave towards the terrible spark-spitting alien device in front of her. Said scientist shook her head, silhouetted by the glow of the machine before her.
I can't. If I leave it now, it'll take out the whole city. No, the whole island with it. Let me just...
As she spoke, she continued to work, hands flying over controls, pressing buttons and pulling levers.
One more connection.
Retrieving a flash drive from her lab coat, she put it into a slot on the machine, using a universal conversion device. Finally, she turned from the machine, racing towards the lieutenant.
Okay,
She called to him,
time to go.
breath already heavy, running. Sam couldn't agree more. He stopped, letting her catch up before turning to run back the way he'd come.
Wait, how big a bang is this going to be? Because I don't know if we're going to make it out of here before that roof caves in.
Having to stop to take a breath or inhale anyway, Osgood shook her head.
You're right, but I wanted to get far enough away to use this.
She reached into her pocket to return her inhaler and retrieve a small disc-shaped device.
Without worrying about the electromagnetic interference from the overloading supercomputer.
At his raised eyebrow, she offered a shrug.
It's an entire Transmat device. It can carry both of us. Josh and I used it to escape a plesiosaur once when it tried to eat our mini-sub.
Right, explain later. Right now, how about you activate that and get us out of here before we're blown up, yeah?
Right, of course. We have to get close. Moving closer and all.
She activated a device, waiting for the telltale violet glow.
Bet Josh liked that bit.
He teased, leaning over her shoulder to move in as close as he could, while trying to not invade her personal space.
Hope he doesn't get too jealous of this.
She wouldn't bring up the naked caveman Sam incident. That was too embarrassing for her, even just bringing it up as a lark. And he wasn't that mean.
Why would he be jealous?
She asked, triggering the device before he could answer. The room wavered a moment, the explosion sending a shockwave out towards the pair. They dematerialized just as the wave hit where they were standing.
Fear and a voice to use for... Greyhound 2 to Wolfhound. Greyhound 2 to Wolfhound. Sam, can you hear me? Osgood, what's going on down there?
Osgood and Sam had been down in the mine for hours. They missed their check-in. That, in and itself, wasn't all that troubling. But then the ground shook, the ground under which his friends were trying to repair a malfunctioning alien ship. Panic caught in his throat.
Osgood, damn it, answer me!
He should have been there. He couldn't help. No, he could have protected her.
Greyhound 2 to Trap 1. I've lost contact, ma'am. Sam and Osgood, they...
A shimmer in the air in front of him cut him off. Slowly, two forms fell from the glittering energy field as it faded.
Osgood, Sam, are you two okay? Yeah, we're good. Good.
Yeah, we're fine, I think.
Osgood answered, coughing slightly out of breath as she tried to stand. Sam groaned, climbing to his feet. The captain quickly closed the gap, helping the scientist to her feet.
You alright?
He asked, his voice soft, concerned.
Take a breath. You seem to be in one piece at least.
What?
She asked, looking up at him with a look of disorientation.
Josh, what are you doing?
Standing, she pulled away and took her head, frowning. Confusion filled her eyes as she touched her ponytail and the temple piece of her glasses.
What's going on?
Her voice was etched with worry.
Josh, I think the Transmat malfunctioned.
Sam offered mind clearing and an expression of cold realization crossing his world-worn features.
You think?
Osgood asked incredulously, turning to look at Sam, taken aback for a moment. Josh looked between the two in absolute confusion. He had no idea what was going on with the two of them.
Okay, I'm going to call this in.
Shaking his head, he activated his comms.
Greyhound 2 to base. Wolfhound and Greyhound 3 are back, but it seems something's gone wrong with the Transmat. We'll need a medical team when we come in. Over.
A relieved tone came over the chief's voice as she responded.
Oh, thank goodness. Bring them in, Greyhound 2. We'll be waiting. Out.
The drive back to the base went on in silence, Sam looking thoughtfully out the window as Osgood just sat uncomfortably next to him in the back seat of the Jeep. Josh snuck glances at the pair through the rear view window as he drove, mind wearing with different scenarios that might have happened to cause them to be so awkward around each other, he'd asked. Of course, but Osgood just said to drop it. Tone in her voice left him to know better than to ask again. The medics gave both of them a clean bill of health to Josh's relief, but it just made him more confused as to what went wrong. Then it didn't help that they kept him in the dark when they went to debrief. In Kate's office, Sam and Osgood stood before the chief. Osgood standing at attention, Sam looking rightly awkward. Kate Stewart stared at the two from across the desk, looking equal parts amused and concerned.
So, you're telling me that you've switched bodies?
She asked, unable to completely hide the incredulity of her voice.
Because of the Transmat. But you've used it plenty of times before with no problem.
Clearing his throat, Sam met her gaze awkwardly.
Yes, well, I think what happened was that the shock wave from the electromagnetic detonation created a feedback loop that induced a telepathic transference. You see, Transmat works by scanning the atomic makeup of a material, in this case, two distinct entities. Then it breaks down the components on a molecular level and sends it elsewhere and resembles it there, similar to a biological fax machine, only quite a bit more complex.
The words tumbled from the soldier's mouth, as much at odds with his usual countenance, as if everything had been since their rematerialization.
Normally, the device has no problem transporting 2 or even more people. Unfortunately, the electromagnetic wave that happened when the ship exploded, well, imploded technically, interfered with the biometric pattern. We were lucky to get out with our lives, honestly. But I would much prefer to figure out a remedy for this as quickly as possible, for obvious reasons.
Osgood watched him with an almost vacant look of confusion.
Now, how about you put that into English this time?
If nothing else proved to Kate what they were saying, it was that.
I think what she means is that some wires got crossed when you two were transported out. So when you were put back together, it was in the wrong body, to put it plainly. So she basically technobabbled what we already told you.
Osgood commented. Sam wasn't exactly enjoying being stuck in his friend's form. It could lead to some rather awkwardness if it went on too long. And depending on how much he'd had to drink before they switched, that wasn't something he was looking forward to.
Yes, well, I was just explaining why I think that happened.
Sam explained.
Basically, the blast knocked our minds into each other's bodies. I need to take the Transmat to my lab to examine it.
Turning to Kate, he added.
If you don't mind.
Kate nodded, waving a hand in dismissal.
Yes, of course. Though, do try to limit your interactions with anyone else, for the sake of each other's reputation and dignity. I'll warn Josh and Colonel Shindy. I think at least they should know, should be left in the loop on this.
Sam, or rather Osgood and Sam's body, seemed to look even more awkward at that fine... Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah, okay. Fine, you're right, but no one else, please. This is difficult enough of a situation as it is with those who already know.
Kate gave Sam a soft sigh.
Of course, it's nobody else's business, but for security reasons, Colonel Shindy and Captain Carter need to know.
Yes, ma'am.
Sam agreed, albeit a bit begrudgingly.
But I'd really prefer to get to work right about now.
Of course.
Kate agreed with a wave of dismissal.
Go fix the Transmat. I won't keep either of you any longer.
Honestly, the unit chief was just as bemused as the pair were, and was thanking her lucky stars that she wasn't in their shoes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sam acknowledged, quickly making his way out of Kate's office and down to the lab. The sooner they were back to their proper bodies, the better. Osgood was fascinated by how the difference in Sam's musculars changed her gait. It was at least a useful distraction from her current worries as she stepped into her lab, cleared a spot on her working table, and immediately started into the device. She never considered how much stronger Sam was than her, which made prying the faceplate off the Transmat easier, but she noted that she'd have to be careful not to accidentally crush something because she was used to her own strength level.
That's Sam. That's...
Well, yeah, you jumped in there for it.
Yeah.
Must be how Josh felt when he got his Auton-enhanced skeleton.
She mused, still not accustomed to hearing her words coming out with Sam's voice. She hoped she didn't have time to get used to it. She wanted to be in her own body by then. Meanwhile, Osgood was taking it a bit more in stride. She made herself a cup of tea, sitting at the table with a tired sigh. Sam is used to keeping his form in optimal operating standards. He was, after all, a soldier and a swimmer. Quite soon, he was noticing the physical difference. Osgood wasn't exactly out of shape, but their physical difference were still rather obvious. He was quite ready to sit and have a cup of tea by the time he got to the break room, but that was why he was a soldier and she was a scientist.
There you are.
Josh's voice dragged Sam's attention from staring at her cup of tea. He was weighing his thirst level with how much quicker he'd have to go if he did. He was rather hoping Osgood would be able to fix them before that point.
How did the debrief go?
Josh continued, sitting next to her at the table.
About as well as could be expected. Kate was just as shocked, I guess you could say, as we were. Okay, maybe not quite as shocked as we were, but can you blame us?
Wow, something like this. Wow, was it just something about the body that made one prone to rambling?
I'm just glad you were alive and well. I wouldn't have forgiven myself if you two didn't come back.
The captain admitted softly.
You guys gave me a right scare.
He tried to play it off, but it didn't take a genius to see the truth in his words. Sam knew, even better than they did, just how much Osgood and Josh meant to each other, outsiders objectively and all. Shaking her head, Sam offered a reassuring smile.
I wouldn't let that happen, you know that.
Yeah, but even you can't prepare for everything. You almost died. It made me realize that I should have said this ages ago.
Josh confessed, his tone gentle, honest. Uh-oh, Sam could tell where this is going. He was more than happy for his friends if they did end up together, but he'd rather they waited until he wasn't in her place. Maybe this should wait.
Maybe this should wait.
Oh, sorry. Josh moved his chair closer, leaning over the corner of the table between them to look intently into her bespectacled eyes.
If I don't say it now, who knows if I'll ever get the chance later?
He announced, tone still loving and certain.
No, I really think this should wait. I'm not.
Sam tried to counter, but Josh cut him off.
Oh, but you are Osgood. You're so much better than you think. You're brilliant and gorgeous and sweet. You're perfect.
He placed his hands on hers, meeting her gaze with a meaningful depth. On the one hand, Sam was happy that Josh was finally going to confess his feelings to Osgood. He had been rooting for those two for a long while already. On the other hand, he didn't want to be the one Josh was confessing his undying love to.
That's not it. I'm not.
His words were cut off as he felt Josh's lips pressed against his. Well, Osgood, it wasn't a bad kiss. He'd certainly had worse, but still. Sam pulled back, looking at Josh with an eye roll.
First, next time you confess your undying love, you should let them talk before you snog them. Second, yours could do with some work. I mean, it's not terrible, but you rush it. Women like it slow, gentle.
Almost as an afterthought, while Josh was drawn back in mortified shock at the reaction, Sam added,
Oh yeah, and I'm not Osgood. I'm Sam. We switched brains or something when we transmatted.
Sam had to stifle a chuckle as Josh looked downright sick. For a ladies' man, it must have been quite off-putting. Sam, well, it didn't really matter to him. He wasn't really affected by it either way. Besides, it wasn't even his body getting snogged.
You're not Osgood?
Josh avoided adding the fact that he just snogged Sam.
Maybe I'll wait until you guys get back in your proper bodies.
His voice was tentative. Hoping it was some kind of joke, though. He didn't doubt him. God, that was giving him a headache already. Their job just got stranger every day. Sam, for his part, was smirking at Josh's reaction. It was an unusual expression in Osgood's usually shy and nervous features. Yet another thing that gave Josh reason to believe the body swap was it him, or was Unit getting weirder and weirder by the day? Plastic-coated bones, alien ninja assassins, dinosaur rampages, ghosts, demons, alternate realities, and now switching bodies. All in a day's work yet for Unit, wasn't it?
Should I make the joke about you being jealous that I'm an Osgood before you got a chance?
Sam couldn't resist the tease. The tint on his friend's cheeks proved his point rather efficiently, and earned a mocking chuckle from the troubleshooter.
Okay, guess not.
Josh was still gaping, eyes wide and cheeks burning as he slid his chair back away from his friend.
I didn't know. I wouldn't have.
Osgood waved a dismissive hand.
Like I said, don't worry about it. We can call that a rehearsal. Make it a little less awkward for you. Next time, remember, let her talk before you snog her. And when you do, slow and gentle. Osgood is skittish about all that romantic stuff, so ease into the kiss. Catch her off guard and she'll end up just freezing up.
The soldier explained. He really hoped they'd both get their happy ending, and maybe that momentary delay was for the best. Josh still looked a bit over it, but nodded at the device. Sam hoped he'd take it to heart.
Why are you so calm about all this, though? You're stuck in someone else's body, and I just kissed you. But you're sitting there like nothing, drinking your tea.
With a quick glance down at the cup cradled between Osgood's hand, the displaced soldier sighed, voice coming out in the scientist's higher pitch.
I'm calm because I have to be, because it won't do any good for anyone by freaking out.
Sam shook his head, pushing aside the cuppa.
And I don't think I'll be drinking this. It was more just something to do.
It was rather uncomfortable, he'd admit, being Osgood, but he was a professional. Letting the awkwardness of the situation get to him would just make things worse. The answer seemed somewhat to placate the captain, and he gave a slight nod of acceptance in response.
All right, well, I'll keep my fingers crossed that you're back in the right body soon, then.
He offered. He didn't even want to think what it must have been like for Sam, though he had to admit to a slightly third of curiosity.
But really, what's it like being a woman?
He kept the fact that it was Osgood out of the equation. It would just make everything that much worse. That was a difficult question to answer. Most of the differences were on a more personal level.
Well, it's rather funny, not funny, haha, but funny like weird. But I mean, I get these moments where I feel awkwardly aware of the fact that I'm female now. And no, I haven't gone somewhere private to explore those differences. Can't say the thought hadn't crossed my mind though, but then I remember it's Osgood's body, and that helps me move my thoughts away from that train.
The lieutenant explained awkwardly.
Oh, and apparently rambling is genetic or something, because I've been doing it since I got into this body.
He didn't add that he noticed he was starting to get used to the body, that he's had a couple of moments where he forgot that he wasn't in his own body. The realization kind of scared him. To be honest, it felt as though his mind was settling into her body, and that didn't bode well for the transference back. If his mind settled, would he even be able to come back to his own body? The thought sent a tendril of panic to race down her spine. Not that he'd let his friend know. The younger soldier was already out of sports enough by all of it. He didn't need the added stress. It must have been an odd sight seeing Sam working at Osgood's lab bench, hunched over a dismantled Transmat device, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. A look of concentration was on the soldier's worn-torn features as he examined an alien microchip and had been embedded in Suntaran Transmat device. A light knock on the door dragged his attention from the device before him.
Ma'am.
Standing upright, he held up the microchip.
Well, good news is I found the problem. Bad news, I'm not exactly sure how to fix it.
He explained, a heavy sigh spilling from his lips.
And worse news, I think time may be running out.
What do you mean, running out?
The tall blonde woman asked as she stepped into her scientist advisor's lab. It was still rather strange having Sam tinkering with Osgood's level of academic enthusiasm. And hopefully she won't have to get time to get used to it, especially if they were on a clock with it. The usual straight-backed soldier slouched slightly, taking on the monsieur characteristics of the mind that currently resided within.
Well, oh wait,
Yeah. Well, I think I'm still waiting on the scans, but I mean, it feels like our minds are acclimatizing. Or at least mine is, and I'd have to assume his as well, which doesn't exactly bode well for a reversal.
Kate was used to her friends' and assistants' mannerisms. Seeing them in the troubleshooter was disconcerting, especially if the tests returned corroborating the scientist's suggestions.
anything you need, just ask. Let's hope you're wrong for once. But just to be safe, try to sort this out as quickly as possible.
It had to be impossibly hard for the pair. Hopefully they get it sorted before it was permanent.
That is what I'm trying to do.
Realizing his tone, he quickly added,
Ma'am.
in an attempt to have his tone show he didn't mean disrespect. Luckily, she understood his impatience, so hadn't taken it personally.
I might need to requisition parts to build a new Transmat device. This one is good and fried.
The frustration edged his words as he dropped the moderately,
Moderately.
sorry. Oh, melted microchip.
At least we have the blueprints to rebuild it, but unless I figure out what happened to cause the switch, all that will happen is we'll transmat, still in the wrong bodies.
I have faith in you, Osgood. Always do, no matter what body you're in.
UK assured her assistant.
Preferably your own, though.
The last bit was said in a tone somewhere between a statement and a hopeful question.